The research station sat at the edge of the crystalline mountains like a small metal insect. The sun above was not quite yellow and not quite white. The sky was a shade of purple that made visitors uncomfortable. Captain Jiwoo stood at the window of the command center and looked out at the strange world that had become her home. She was a small woman by human standards. Her height was just 5 feet and 2 inches. The other colonists sometimes joked that she could hide behind the equipment. But Jiwoo did not mind. She had always been small, and she had always found ways to be strong. The colony had been established on Kepler 442b for 3 years now. It was a fragile place. The mountains were made of crystal that sang in the wind. The ground was not always stable. Tremors came without warning. Animals moved through the dark forests that no human had ever fully explored. But the Vethenar people lived here peacefully. They were tall creatures with skin that glowed softly in different colors. They had helped the humans understand how to survive on this world. They had become friends. Today, 3 young cubs had come to the station. The Vethenar called them cubs, though they were almost the size of adult humans already. Their names were Torael, Kessin, and Miravol. They had been sent to the human colony to learn about human ways. The Vethenar believed it was important for their young to understand all the peoples of the galaxy, so they had sent their cubs to Jiwoo. Torael was the largest of the 3. He was 7 feet tall and his skin glowed a soft blue. His eyes were wide and curious. Kessin was slightly shorter, with skin that shifted between purple and green. Miravol was the smallest, but she was still nearly 6 feet tall. Her skin was a deep orange color. They stood in the main hall of the station and looked around with wonder. They had never been this close to humans before. "This place is so small," Kessin said. His voice was like wind moving through musical chimes. "Everything here is small," Miravol added. She was looking at the furniture and the doorways. "How do you live in such a tiny space?" Jiwoo came out from her office. She looked up at the 3 massive beings and smiled. "We make use of what we have," she said simply. "Space is not always the most important thing. What matters is how you use it." The cubs looked at her with surprise. They had expected the human captain to be larger. They had expected someone who looked important. Instead, they found a woman whose head barely reached to Kessin's chest. "You are the captain?" Torael asked. "I am," Jiwoo said. "I know you might think size matters, but I promise you, you will learn that it does not." The cubs did not look convinced, but they followed her as she showed them the station. She explained how the equipment worked. She showed them the gardens where they grew food. She introduced them to the other colonists. Everyone was kind to the cubs, though many stared when they saw how tall they were. The day was moving toward evening when the first tremor came. It was small, just a gentle shaking, but Jiwoo's face changed. She had felt many tremors on this world. She knew that some were warning signs. "Everyone inside," she called out. "Now!" The colonists moved quickly. They knew to listen to their captain. The cubs watched as Jiwoo moved from room to room, checking systems and making sure everyone was safe. She spoke into a communication device and asked the other settlements if they had felt the tremor. The answers came back one by one. They all had felt it. It was stronger in some places than others. Then came the second tremor. This one was much stronger. The station shook, lights flickered, alarms began to sound. "The mountain is unstable," Dr. Teo called from the science station. "We are getting readings of massive geological movement. Something is very wrong." Jiwoo moved to the main computer. Her small fingers flew across the keyboard. She pulled up maps of the mountain. She studied the data. Then she understood. The crystal mountains were made of stone that shifted and changed with temperature. The previous cold season had been colder than usual. Now the spring sun was warming everything too quickly. The mountain was becoming unstable. A collapse was possible. "We need to evacuate," one of the engineers said. His name was Park Jinsu, and he was afraid. "No," Jiwoo said. "Look here." She pointed to the monitors. "If we can control the collapse, we can direct it away from the station. We have maybe 1 hour before the main failure happens. If we work together, we can do this." The third tremor came while she was still explaining. This one threw people to the ground. The cubs grabbed onto doorways to keep from falling. Miravol's eyes went wide with fear. She looked at Jiwoo. "Stay calm," the captain said, "and follow my instructions exactly." The tremors became more frequent. The building shook almost without stopping. Jimsu and another engineer named Hei Wan worked to shut down the systems that might fail. The science team monitored the mountain, and Jiwoo stood in the center of everything, calm and focused, giving orders. The collapse came suddenly. The ground outside cracked open. A huge sinkhole began to form less than 100 meters from the station. The sound was like the world breaking. The cubs pressed themselves against the walls, terrified. They were so large, so strong, yet they felt completely helpless. Then part of the station itself began to crack. A section of the floor in the storage room opened up. The hole grew larger. Dr. Teo shouted that they had to run, but Jiwoo was already moving. She was small enough to see the path through the damaged building that the larger people could not see. She found a passage between the falling rocks. She turned back to look at the 3 cubs. "Stay behind me," she said. Her voice was quiet but absolutely certain. The cubs did not argue. Even though they were so much larger than her, they followed. Toriel came first, squeezing his massive body through the tight passages that Jiwoo led him through. Kessin and Miravol followed. The ground shook beneath their feet. Rocks fell around them, but Jiwoo kept moving, kept finding the safe paths. She led them through parts of the station where the damage was least severe. She knew every corner of this building. She had walked these halls 10,000 times. Her knowledge was their salvation. Within minutes, she had brought them to the exit. They emerged into the daylight just as the station's east wing collapsed behind them. The cubs stood in the open, breathing hard, their skin glowing brightly with stress. They turned to look at Jiwoo. She was still standing calmly, looking back at the damaged station to make sure all the colonists had made it out. "How did you know the way?" Toriel asked, his voice shaking. Jiwoo looked up at him and smiled. "I told you," she said simply. "Size is not what matters. It is knowledge and courage and caring about the people you lead. I know this place better than anyone. That made me strong enough to save you." The 3 cubs looked at their small human captain differently now. The fear in their eyes had changed to something else, something that looked like respect. The weeks after the collapse were busy ones. The station needed many repairs. The crystals in the mountain had shifted. New areas became dangerous. The Vethnar people came to help the humans rebuild. They brought equipment and materials. They worked alongside the colonists. But the 3 cubs did not leave. They stayed at the human colony. They wanted to stay with Jiwoo. At first, the other Vethnar thought this was strange. They asked their cubs why they did not return home. Toriel, Kessin, and Miravol did not have a simple answer. They only knew that they wanted to learn more from Jiwoo. They wanted to understand what made this small human so different. So the Vethnar allowed them to stay. They sent supplies and said the cubs could remain as long as they learned valuable things. Jiwoo did not treat the cubs as guests. She treated them as students. Every morning, she taught them about human survival. She showed them how to use tools. She explained human history and human ways of thinking. The cubs listened carefully. They asked many questions. Toriel wanted to understand human fighting. Kessin wanted to learn about human science. Miravol wanted to know about human art and music. But more than learning facts, the cubs learned something different from Jiwoo. They learned how to think. She would give them problems to solve. She would ask them questions and wait for them to find the answers themselves. When they made mistakes, she did not punish them. She helped them understand what went wrong and how to do better next time. One day, Jiwoo took all 3 cubs to the crystal caves near the settlement. The caves were beautiful but dangerous. The crystals grew from the walls and ceiling. They were sharp and could cut. They reflected light in strange ways. The caves were also where the bioluminescent creatures lived. These creatures glowed in darkness. They were harmless, but many people feared them because they were strange. "Why did you bring us here?" Kessin asked. "I want you to see something," Jiwoo said. "Look around. What do you see?" "Danger," Miravol answered. "Sharp crystals, strange creatures. This place is not safe." "It is dangerous if you are careless," Jiwoo agreed. "But look more carefully. What else do you see?" The cubs walked through the cave with Jiwoo. Slowly, they began to see what she meant. The crystals were beautiful. The creatures were not really dangerous. They were just living their lives. The danger was only real if you did not understand the place. "A place is only dangerous if you do not know it," Jiwoo explained. "But if you understand it, if you respect it, if you move carefully and think about what you are doing, then you are safe. This is true for any place. It is true for any situation." Toriel understood. "You are teaching us how to think about the world," he said. "Yes," Jiwoo said. "That is more important than anything else." But not everyone in the colony was happy about the 3 cubs staying. Some of the humans whispered about it. They wondered why the Vethnar cubs would follow a human captain. They wondered if it was right for aliens to be living in the human settlement. Dr. Teo, the science officer, did not think this was a problem. He watched Jiwoo work with the cubs. He saw how much they were learning. "She is a good teacher," he said to Park Jin-soo one afternoon. "Better than a teacher," Jin-soo replied. "She is showing them what it means to be human. She is showing them that we are not weak, even though we are small. That is important." One night, after many weeks at the colony, Toriel could not sleep. He walked out to the observation deck. Jiwoo was there, looking up at the stars. The sky was full of stars on Kepler 442b, many more stars than could be seen from Earth. Toriel stood beside her, his large form almost touching the ceiling. "I want to ask you something," Toriel said quietly. "Ask," Jiwoo replied. "My people are so much larger than you. My people are stronger. My people have better weapons. My people have technology that is older than your entire species. And yet, you lead us. You teach us. We follow you. Why do you think that is?" Jiwoo was quiet for a long time. Then she spoke. "Do you think I am strong because of my body?" she asked. "No," Toriel said. "I know you are not." "Then why do you think I am strong?" Jiwoo continued. Toriel thought about this. He thought about the collapse when Jiwoo had guided them through danger. He thought about the lessons, when she had helped them understand new ways of thinking. He thought about the cave, when she had taught them that fear comes from not understanding things. "Because you know who you are," Toriel finally said. "Because you do not apologize for being small. Because you use what you have instead of wishing you had something different. Because you care about others more than you care about yourself." Jiwoo smiled. "You are learning," she said. Word of the cubs staying with Jiwoo spread through the colony. More and more young colonists wanted to spend time with them. They wanted to learn from Toriel, Kessin, and Miravol about the Vethnar ways. And they wanted to learn from Jiwoo how to lead with wisdom instead of fear. The 3 cubs became bridges between the 2 peoples. When reports came from other colonies, they spoke of the unusual friendship between the human captain and the 3 Vethnar cubs. Some people thought it was wonderful. Some people thought it was strange. But Jiwoo did not worry about what others thought. She focused on teaching her students. Months passed. The cubs grew taller, their skin glowed brighter. But their hearts seemed to glow brightest when Jiwoo was near. They had come to see her as more than a captain or a teacher. They saw her as a mother, or an older sister, or an elder who showed them how to live. And Miraval, the quietest of the three, finally found the courage to speak what she had been thinking for a long time. One evening, she went to Jiwoo alone. "I want you to know," Miraval said, "that my kind does not give respect easily. We honor those who are strong, and I have learned that you are the strongest person I know, not because of your body, but because of your spirit. No matter what happens in the future, I will follow you." Jiwoo took the small hand and held it gently between her two large palms. "Thank you," she said, "but strength is not for leading others. Strength is for protecting what you love. Remember that, Miraval. That is the most important thing you will ever learn." The three cubs remembered this. They would need to remember it very soon, because danger was coming to their world, and they would need all the strength they could find. The message came on a normal morning. The communication officer, a woman named Soo Jin, called out to Jiwoo from her station. There was a ship approaching. It was not a ship from any colony they knew. It was not a Vethnar ship. The design was strange and military. The power signals were strong, very strong. Jiwoo stood over Soo Jin's shoulder and watched the screens. The ship was large. It moved with purpose and speed. It was heading directly toward their settlement. She felt her stomach tighten. She had seen reports about a group called the Collective. They were a faction that believed they should rule all the galaxy. They conquered worlds and forced civilizations to obey them. "Send a message," Jiwoo commanded. "Tell them we are a peaceful settlement. Tell them we wish to talk." Soo Jin sent the message. For a moment, there was silence. Then a voice came through the speakers. It was cold and without emotion. "This is Commander Vexhall of the Collective. Your settlement and all its resources are now under collective control. Surrender immediately. Resistance will result in death." Governor Minhei came running into the command center. He was an older man, and he looked very afraid. "What do we do?" he asked. Jiwoo thought quickly. "We prepare for the worst and hope for the best," she said. "Soo Jin, send them our location. Tell them we want to negotiate. Jinsu, start evacuating the non-essential colonists to the deep caves. Take supplies and medical equipment. We may need to hide people there." The settlement became chaos. People ran in every direction. Some were packing supplies. Some were saying goodbye to friends. Some were crying. The three cubs stood together watching everything. They were scared, but they looked to Jiwoo for guidance. "Come with me," Jiwoo said to them. She led them to a room where maps were spread on a large table. On the maps were all the caves and passages of the nearby mountains. "We need to understand our world better than they understand it. That is our advantage." The ship landed outside the settlement. Not gently. It came down hard, crushing a section of the outer wall. A ramp opened, and soldiers began to march out. They were not biological beings. They were machines, or part machine, or something between. They were built for war. They moved with terrible precision. There were 40 of them. Commander Vexahal emerged from the ship. He was massive, with armor that covered his entire body. He had weapons that humans had never seen before. When he spoke, his voice shook the ground. "Where is your leader?" he demanded. Governor Minhei stepped forward. He was shaking, but he tried to be brave. "I am the governor," he said. "I speak for this settlement." Vexhal looked down at him. "You are not important," the commander said. "Where is the one they call Jiwoo, the one who leads the Vethnar cubs?" Jiwoo felt the breath catch in her throat. How did they know about her? How did they know about the cubs? She stepped forward. "I am here," she said, her voice steady. Vexhal looked at her with surprise. "This is the human who commands Vethnar?" he asked. He laughed, a terrible sound like metal breaking. She is nothing. She is smaller than a child of my kind. How is this possible? The Vethnar have their reasons, Jiwoo said calmly. I do not care about reasons, Vexhal replied. I care about power, and I see no power in someone so small. He turned to his soldiers. Collect all the humans and Vethnar, take their technology, destroy anything we do not need. The soldiers began to move. Some went to the settlement buildings, some started taking equipment, some pointed weapons at the colonists. The people of the settlement put their hands up. There was nothing they could do. The collective soldiers were too many and too strong. But Jiwoo was not watching the soldiers. She was watching the mountain. She was watching the crystals and the caves. She was thinking about what she knew. She was thinking about how to use her knowledge as a weapon. She caught the attention of Toriel, Kessin, and Miravol. She made a small gesture, a gesture that meant, follow me, but carefully. The three cubs understood. They had learned to watch for her signals. While the soldiers were busy taking prisoners, the four of them slipped away. They moved quietly through the settlement. They stayed in the shadows. The cubs were so large that normally they could not hide, but the soldiers were busy and careless. They did not expect anyone to escape. Jiwoo led them to an old tunnel that went under the settlement. It was a passage she had found months ago. It led deep into the mountain. They walked through darkness, with only small lights to guide them. Behind them, they could hear the sounds of the collective soldiers destroying the settlement. In a hidden chamber deep underground, Jiwoo finally stopped. The three cubs gathered around her. They were frightened and confused. What do we do now? Miravol asked. We think, Jiwoo said, and we plan. The collective believes that power comes from size and weapons. They believe that we are defeated because we are small and we do not have powerful weapons. But they are wrong. We have something they do not have. What? Toriel asked. We know this world, Jiwoo said. They do not. We understand these mountains. We understand the caves. We understand the creatures that live here. They do not. That is our power. That is how we will stop them. But we are so few, Kessin said. They have so many soldiers. Numbers do not matter, Jiwoo replied. What matters is strategy. What matters is using what you have. I am small, but my size helps me move through tight places. You are large, but your size makes you strong in other ways. We each have power. The collective does not understand that yet. She looked at the three cubs. In the dim light, they could see each other's faces. They could see the determination in Jiwoo's eyes. I know you are scared, she said. I am scared too. But fear is just a feeling. It does not have to stop us from doing what is right. Right now, people are being hurt up there. Our friends are in danger. And the only way to help them is to be strong. Not strong in the way the collective is strong, but strong in our own way. Miravol reached out and put her large hand on Jiwoo's small shoulder. Tell us what to do, she said. We will do it. Toriel and Kessin moved closer. They formed a circle in the darkness, this small human and her three massive alien cubs. First, Jiwoo said, we need to understand our enemy. Then we need to understand our weapons. And finally, we need to think about how to use what we know to defeat them. She pulled out the maps from her pack. In the glow of the light, she began to show them her plan. It was a plan that required perfect timing. It required knowledge that only they possessed. It required them to believe that a small human and three young Vethnar could somehow defeat the collective. Outside above them in the settlement, Commander Vexhal was celebrating his victory. He did not know that his real war had just begun. He did not know that he had awakened something in the mountain. He did not know that the true battle would not be fought with weapons, but with wisdom and knowledge and the unshakable will of four beings who had learned to trust each other completely. 3 days passed in preparation. Jiwoo and the 3 cubs worked in the darkness of the mountain caves. They did not sleep much. They did not rest much. They were building something. They were building their defense. The first step was to understand the collective soldiers better. Kessin used his science knowledge to study the equipment that the collective had left scattered around the mountain entrance. He learned that the soldiers used a specific type of energy source. They depended on signals from their ship. Without the ship's signals, they became less effective. This was the first weakness. The second weakness was more physical. Jiwoo had learned from studying the soldiers that they were built for flat ground and open spaces. They moved best in straight lines. The mountain caves, with all their tight passages and strange shapes, were not designed for beings like that. Toriel understood this. He knew the shape of their bodies and what they could and could not do. He helped Jiwoo plan passages that would be difficult for the soldiers to navigate. The third weakness was the most important. It was psychological. The collective soldiers believed they were superior. They believed they could not be defeated. This false confidence was a weapon that Jiwoo could use against them. On the 4th day, Jiwoo and the cubs emerged from the mountain. They did not come out where the settlement was. They came out far away, in the crystal canyons where the mountains were most beautiful and most dangerous. This was where Jiwoo wanted to fight. She had sent a message to the collective. She had told Commander Vexhal that she would meet him in the canyons. She said she wanted to negotiate. She said she wanted to talk about the humans and what the collective wanted from them. Vexhal came, but he did not come to negotiate. He came with his soldiers. He came expecting an easy victory. He came expecting to crush this small human and her 3 large pets. The canyon was narrow. The crystal walls rose high on both sides. The ground was uneven and dangerous. Vexhal walked down the canyon with his soldiers spread out behind him. He was looking for Jiwoo. Then the attack began, but it was not what he expected. There were no weapons. There were no explosions. Instead, the cubs used their massive strength to cause the crystalline walls to collapse. Huge pieces of crystal fell down into the canyon. The soldiers had to run to avoid being crushed. But the passes were narrow. They could not all run at the same time. They got in each other's way. Toriel, from high up on the canyon wall, pushed against a massive crystal formation. His strength was incredible. The crystal shattered and fell. When it landed, it trapped 3 soldiers under its weight. They could not escape. Kessin had prepared the ground with substances he had created from the mountain rocks. They made the earth unstable. When the soldiers walked on certain areas, they would slip and fall into crevasses. Many soldiers fell this way. Some were not hurt badly, but they could not continue fighting. Miraval used her speed and size to block passages. She would stand in front of the soldiers and not move. They could not go around her because the passages were too narrow. They could not go through her because she was too strong, so they had to stop. And while they were stopped, the ground beneath them would become unstable. And Jiwoo? She moved through the canyon like she had been born there. She was small enough to fit through cracks that the soldiers could not enter. She was fast enough to stay ahead of them. She was smart enough to always be where the soldiers were not. She moved from high ground to low ground, from tunnel to canyon, from shadow to shadow. The soldiers began to panic. They were trained for straightforward combat. They were trained to defeat larger enemies with superior firepower. But this was different. This was a kind of combat they did not understand. They were being defeated by the mountain itself. They were being defeated by enemies they could not see clearly. They were being defeated by knowledge and planning. Some soldiers tried to radio back to the ship for help, but Kessin had done his work well. The signals did not work properly in the canyon. The soldiers felt more and more alone. After an hour of this battle, nearly all of Vexhal's soldiers had been defeated. Not killed, but stopped, trapped, unable to move. Some had run away and fled back to the settlement. Only Vexhal remained, and a small group of his elite guards. Commander Vexhal was angry. His face, what could be seen of it beneath his armor, was red with fury. "You are a coward," he shouted at Jiwoo. "You attack with tricks. You do not fight like a warrior." Jiwoo stepped out from behind a crystal formation. She stood in the open, alone. The three cubs stayed back in the shadows, watching. "I fight to win," Jiwoo said calmly. "I fight to protect my people. I do not care about honor or pride. I care about what is right." Vexhal raised his weapon. It was a terrible weapon. If it fired, it would destroy everything around Jiwoo. The cubs moved forward, ready to protect their captain, but Jiwoo held up her hand. She told them to stay back. "Do you want to know why your soldiers failed?" Jiwoo asked Vexhal. "No," the commander said. "I want to kill you." "I will tell you anyway," Jiwoo said. Her voice was still calm. "They failed because they believed they were superior. They believed that size and power were everything. They did not believe that intelligence and knowledge could matter more. But on this world, they do." "I do not care about your words," Vexhal said. "I know," Jiwoo replied. "But I am going to tell you something true. I have faced worse odds than this. I have stood in the face of destruction. I have stared into the darkness and found light. I am not afraid of you." She was bluffing. She was terrified. But Vexhal could not see that. He could only see a small human standing in front of him with absolute certainty in her eyes and voice. He could see that she was not shaking. He could see that she was not backing away. For a moment, Vexhal hesitated. In that moment, Toriel, Kessin, and Miraval moved. They came out from the shadows. They stood beside Jiwoo. The three massive creatures formed a protective circle around the small human captain. Vexhal looked at them. He looked at how they stood. He understood something in that moment. These were not slaves. These were not beings forced to follow. These were beings who had chosen to stand with this human. They had chosen willingly. They had chosen from love and respect. The commander lowered his weapon. "This should not be possible," he said quietly. "A human should not be able to command the respect of the Vethnar." "You still do not understand," Jiwoo said. "It is not about being human or Vethnar. It is about being true. It is about standing for something. It is about being willing to sacrifice yourself for others." Vexhal stood there for a long time. Then he turned and walked back toward the settlement. His remaining guards followed him. They did not run. They did not attack. They simply left. When they were gone, the three cubs looked down at Jiwoo. "You were scared," Toriel said. It was not a question. "Very scared," Jiwoo admitted. "But you stood firm anyway," Miraval said. "Yes," Jiwoo said. "That is what strength really is. It is not the absence of fear. It is doing what is right even when you are afraid." The cubs learned this lesson in that moment. They would never forget it. Commander Vexhal returned to his ship. His soldiers gathered around him, waiting for orders. Some were wounded. All were confused. They had never been defeated before. They had never faced an enemy that they could not understand. Vexhal called for a communication link to the Collective Council. The Council was the group that controlled the Collective. They made all the decisions. They decided which worlds to conquer and which worlds to leave alone. They were very powerful, and they were very proud. When the Council answered, Vexhal reported his failure. He told them about the humans and the Vethnar cubs. He told them about the strategy Jiwoo had used. He told them about how the small human had stood alone against him without fear. The Council was silent for a long time. Then they spoke. They said that the settlement must be conquered. They said that anyone who resisted the Collective must be destroyed. They ordered Vexhal to prepare a new attack, a larger attack, an attack that could not fail. But Vexhal did something that shocked his soldiers. He refused. "No," he said to the council. "I will not attack this world again." The council was furious. They demanded to know why. Vexhal tried to explain what he had learned. He tried to tell them that strength was not just about size and weapons. He tried to tell them that some beings had a kind of power that could not be measured in normal ways. But the council did not listen. They removed Vexhal from his position. They sent a new commander with more soldiers. But Vexhal did something else. He used his last command as a military officer to send a message to all of his soldiers. He told them what he had learned in the canyon. He told them about the small human captain. He told them about how she had faced them without fear. He told them that her courage was greater than any weapon. Some of the soldiers thought Vexhal was crazy, but others listened. Some of them asked to leave the collective. They said they did not want to conquer anymore. They said they wanted to understand instead. The collective had to let them go because Vexhal was still technically in command. They could not refuse his soldiers that choice. These soldiers left the ship. They went to find Jiwoo. They wanted to learn from her, just like the three cubs had learned from her. When the new collective commander arrived, he found that many soldiers had left. This made him very angry, but he was also worried. He had heard the story of the small human who defeated the previous commander. He had heard about how she had inspired Vexhal's soldiers to abandon the collective. He called his officers together. "This human must be eliminated," he said. "We cannot let her inspire other worlds to resist us." But something happened that the new commander did not expect. The soldiers, even his own loyal soldiers, began to talk among themselves. They began to ask questions. If this small human could inspire so much loyalty, what did that say about how the collective treated its own soldiers? If strength came from something other than size and weapons, what did that say about how the collective measured strength? Some soldiers asked to be allowed to meet Jiwoo. The new commander refused, but the soldiers kept asking. More and more of them wanted to see this human who had defeated the previous commander with nothing but courage and knowledge. Jiwoo knew nothing of this at first. She was busy helping the survivors of the settlement. Many colonists had hidden in the caves. They were hungry and scared. Jiwoo worked with the Vethenar to bring them food and medical supplies. Governor Minhai had survived, and he helped her coordinate the rescue efforts. But then, something unexpected happened. The three cubs came running to find Jiwoo. They were excited and confused at the same time. "The soldiers want to talk to you," Torel said. "What soldiers?" Jiwoo asked. "The ones from the collective ship," Kessin explained. "Some of them have left the ship. They are coming to the settlement. They want to meet you." Jiwoo was confused. She had expected the collective to attack again. She had not expected this. She went with the cubs to see what was happening. At the edge of the settlement, she found nearly 50 soldiers. They had removed their weapons. They had removed their armor. They stood there in their simple uniforms, and they looked at Jiwoo with respect and admiration. "We heard what you did," one of them said. His name was Keth. He was a large being, nearly as tall as Torel. "We heard that you defeated our commander with courage and knowledge instead of weapons. We want to follow you instead of the collective." Jiwoo looked at them with surprise. "I do not want followers," she said. "I want people to think for themselves. I want people to make their own choices." "That is exactly why we want to follow you," Keth replied. "The collective tells us what to think. The collective tells us what to do. But you teach us how to think. You teach us how to make choices. That is what we want." More soldiers came in the days that followed. Not all of them. Many soldiers were still loyal to the collective. But enough came that the balance of power had shifted. The new collective commander realized that he did not have enough soldiers to conquer the world anymore. In fact, he had lost control of his army. He sent one final message to the collective council. He told them that the situation on Kepler 442b was lost. He told them that they had underestimated the humans and the Vethnar. He told them that they should focus on other worlds, other targets. The council agreed. They ordered the new commander to withdraw. They left Kepler 442b in peace. But before the collective ship left, something remarkable happened. Commander Vexhal came to find Jiwoo one last time. He was being taken away because he had refused to conquer the world. He was being sent to a distant place where the collective could keep him isolated. "I want you to know something," Vexhal said to Jiwoo. "In my entire life, I believed that power came from weapons and size. I believed that the weak should serve the strong, but you showed me that I was wrong. You showed me that true strength comes from something else. I do not know if I will ever be able to change completely, but because of you, I will try." Jiwoo took his large hand and held it for a moment. "That is all anyone can do," she said. "Try to be better than they were yesterday." Vexhal left on the ship. As it took off and disappeared into the sky, the people of the settlement watched it go. They had survived. More than that, they had changed things. Some members of the collective had begun to question their beliefs. It was a small change, but it was a beginning. That night, Jiwoo sat with Torael, Kessin, and Miraval under the stars. The three cubs were now officially free of the collective. They had chosen to stay on Kepler 442b. They had chosen to stay with Jiwoo. "I am proud of you," Jiwoo said to them. "But more important, I hope you are proud of yourselves. You had a choice. You could have abandoned me. You could have gone with the collective, but you stood by me. That took real courage." Miraval spoke for all three of them. "You taught us what courage really is. Now you have taught us that courage matters more than anything else. How could we have chosen anything but to stand with you?" The three cubs reached out and placed their hands gently on Jiwoo's small figure. She was so small, and they were so large. But in that moment, she was the one who held them all together, not through force or size, but through the strength of her character and the power of her conviction. The future was still uncertain. There were still many dangers in the galaxy. But for now, at least, there was peace. And that peace had been won by the most unlikely champion of all, a small human woman with the heart of a giant.